morning, everybody, and I've got another little code along with React video for you today. I'm going to use React Router DOM and build a real simple link navigation setup for a website. There's a repo. I'm going to try to do this in 10 minutes or less, so let's get started. I've already run create React app, and what I need to do now is open that up. And let's see. It's this one. What I'm going to do is go straight to the source folder and just delete all this stuff. And we'll start from scratch. So what we want to do is, first of all, open up your command control tilde and open up your terminal, and we're gonna npm install s react router DOM, which is the library we're going to use to handle our, as I've said before, sort of faked API navigation. And I'm going to show you how to integrate that. We're going to try to do it fast. And if you have any questions, just holler at me in the comments or the Slack chat. And here we go. I'm going to say index.js. Even while that's installing, I can get started. I can import React using dead simple snippets and React DOM. Import React and React DOM. And then we're going to say React DOM.render. And we're going to actually use something from React Router DOM right here. So we're going to use a thing called a browser router. I'm going to need to import that from React Router DOM. So I'll destructure that. Right, it's a named export. And then I'll use that in my render method like this. Browser router. I can type, and I'm going to use that to wrap my app. So this is a pattern you'll see a lot in React. This is the first time I think some of you have seen it, but the idea is, and for our next, we'll just do our usual get element by ID. Attach that whole thing to the root. The idea with this browser router and with this pattern in React is we'll wrap our app in browser router, and browser router will pass on a lot of extra functionality to our app. So at the root of our app, we'll always need to have something like a router to route our code for us, and it functions a lot like a router on the back end, if you're familiar with that. And if you're not, don't worry. Just know you need this browser router around your app. All right, let's make our app. So we'll import app from app.js, and we'll make that right now. We'll say app.js, and we will again import React. And here we're going to need to import some more things from React Router DOM. So we'll import a switch and a root, and that'll be enough for now. We'll see. Oh, we want to make these not from Babel types, but from React Router DOM. Okay. No, we don't want switch case. We want just switch. Okay, good. And now we'll make our app, and we'll just keep it super simple because we're going to just focus on this routing. So we're going to need, let's see, where's that site? Where's my browser? So in our main app, we're going to need this navbar, and we're going to need a page. And we're going to use the navbar to select which page is displayed. And you can see as I click a link, it updates the search bar, or the, what do they call that? Sorry, it's early. I'm not maybe not top form here. But you can see it changes the content of the page. And we do that using this browser router and a switch component. But let's go ahead and just we'll start with just an enclosing div maybe. And I'm not sure if I'll style that or not. But we'll have two components. One will be our navbar, and well, not quite two components. We'll have our navbar, and underneath that we'll have this switch statement, which works just like, or really similar to, a switch case, except that in this switch we're basically just switching between different URL states. And so we've got, for each one of those, we're going to make a route that will have a path and a component. And sorry about that leaf blower or whatever outside. I hope it's not too annoying. And so into each one of these routes, we're going to give a URL, like so, and a component. And we're going to have to make those components. And we're going to need to make this navbar. And then we'll be done, pretty much. So we'll keep it pretty simple. I think we should start with these components. And let's just make them. We're going to make 3 of them. Just for fun. They're not going to do anything, but it'll let us know that our navbar is working. So we'll say home, about, and let's just say orders, right? And so for each one of those, we'll need a component, and we'll say this will be about, and this will be orders. And you know what? Let's say here we'll say exact path. So this, if we add the exact keyword, that means if there's anything after this, then it will be ignored. So only if it's just this will it go home. But if there's just this and then about, it'll go to about and it'll go to orders. And let's go ahead and get all the other traffic that comes, and we'll say redirect to that. So if there's anything else, backslash whatever, then it'll go back to the home. And we need to bring in the redirect. And so we've got that component as well. Now let's make these home and about and orders. And I'm going to put those in a folder called pages, which is, one way to organize a site. It's not the only way. But just for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to use that this time. And I'm not even going to make folders. We're going to have like one. Sometimes, most of the time, I will make a folder for each page when I use this organizational structure. But this way we can easily, use the same CSS for all of them. We're not really going to focus on these pages. And I'm just going to say, like, IMR single function component, stateless functional component, sorry. And I'll just say div and about page here. And then we'll just copy this. We'll say home. We'll say home. And we'll say home page here. And we'll do the same for orders. And we'll actually, before I did all that copying and pasting, what I should have done is also have this import style from, and we're just gonna call it page.module.css. So that'll be for all three of these. And I'll put that on here and on here. And one more thing I should have done, silly me, is add that class name. And we'll just give that a, so we'll copy this to each one as well. So we'll come back, and that way we can just, you know, give it a background color or whatever we want to give it. And you know what? Let's just go ahead and do that now. Page.module.css. And I think we called that main page wrapper. And we'll give it a background color of bisque for now. And let's make it a little bit darker. And padding, pretty big padding, just so we can offset it. Maybe we'll set the font size 2 rems or something. Or let's say 1.2 rems. All right, so now we should, well, we're not quite there yet, but we're almost to the point where we should be able to see stuff. And I'm gonna import navbar. Let's make that navbar too. So we'll say components, and I think inside of the components folder, I'm going to make a folder for my navbar. And I think inside of there, I'll say navbar.js. And another folder inside of the components folder we'll call navbar item. And inside there, we'll have a navbar item. Oops. .js. All right, so it's starting to take shape. I'm just gonna, for now, we'll say navbar. And in here we can say div navbar will go here. Good. So there's our navbar. We don't need our navbar item yet. In our app, we need to import navbar from components, navbar. We need to import home from pages, home, and we need to import about from pages, about, and import orders from pages, orders. And you know, I'm just going fast through this because I think you already know this stuff. And what we want to get to is understanding how this switch is going to work, or how this routing is going to work. So this is your basic setup for with React Router DOM, and you know, most of the sites you'll build is that you'll have in your index.js this browser router to wrap your app, and in your app you'll bring in a switch and a route and a redirect, and you'll set up your routing in your app. And then to get to this routing, to fill out the URL, right, with \about, you'll trigger those values from a navbar. And in the navbar, we'll use the link component. But right now, I think if I run this, hopefully React Router DOM worked out okay, and I can just npm start at this point and see if things are working. And that's the others. That's the site already built. It seems to be. Yes, there's my home page. So you can see we're at the home, and we'll see if I go to about. Let me get to the about page. So the routing is working. This routing is working. It's taking us where we need to go. To make our navbar, we need to just create a way to click on a link up here and change these values for us, so we don't have to just go to the URL and say orders or just home. And let's just check that other one. So that redirects to home. And that's great. So that's all working. And now we need to just make this navbar. And you know, this is maybe the slightly more interesting part of this. There's a lot of different ways to make this navbar. Obviously, we're going to make a real simple one. And I'm going to use a config object to build that. And I'll show you what I mean by that. I'm going to make an array. And in that array, I'm going to have an object for each of these routes. So I'll say title for this first one will be home, and the URL will be the URL for home. And we'll do the same for about. I'll say title, about, and URL will be about. Oh, I don't need that period or that 0. And then you guessed it, for the last one, we'll say title orders, and URL will be orders. Nice, makes sense. And then we're going to pass that config object into our navbar. So I'm going to say config equals navbar config. Now, obviously, we could write this array inside the navbar, but I like to keep it at the app level just for organizational purposes. And it's this navbar config could also go in a separate file. It really depends on how you want to structure things. But in either case, we'll use this navbar config, whether we keep it in the navbar, or we keep it in a separate file, or we keep it in Redux, or whatever we decide we want to do with it. This navbar config in our navbar will be very useful. And what I think you can probably guess, we're going to map over this navbar config object. So I'm going to go to my navbar, and I'm going to bring that config prop in and destructure it, and then I'm going to, inside this div, say config.map, where each item will return a link. Actually, no. Each item will return a navbar item. As we're going to make this component. So each item will return a navbar item, and we'll pass in a title, which will be item.title. So for each item, we've got a title and we've got a URL. And so we'll also pass that in, a URL. And I need to import navbar item from, and it looks like we need to go out one and then in one. And we'll get that. So now let's see, item.title, item.url. So we're mapping over that array, that config array, and pulling off the title and the URL for each one, passing it into this navbar item. And we can go ahead and also make our styles. Maybe we'll just make this navbar item first and then come back and style these. So we'll again import React, and this navbar item we know brings in a title and a URL. So those are the props. We'll destructure those props off, and here's where we'll use that link. And so this will be title, and inside of our link, which I hate it when I forget to escape that autocomplete. So we'll import link from React router DOM, and this link is what will sort of function like an anchor tag, except that instead of taking us to an actual URL, it'll just put that URL in the URL window, and React will process it just like it was before, with that switch. Or React router DOM will do that for us, sorry. And so in here we'll just say to, and this to will be the URL and item, just title. So let's see, item is not defined, navbar item, right? That should be okay now. And there we go. So now we've got our navbar, and we can click on it. About orders home. It works. Hooray. Now we just need to style that baby up. And I'll do that real quick. First of all, our item will import styles from navbar item .module.css. And in here we can say navbar item.module.css, and what do we have? We have a navbar item, and this navbar item, let's go ahead and give it a color of white, and we'll give it a height of 4 rems and a margin top of 2 rems, and make the font size bigger, and get rid of those underlines, and let's go ahead and space those out a little bit. Some margin left. And we should, if I refresh this, oh, I need to bring this navbar item style onto my navbar item. And so we'll say here, link to class name styles dot navbar item. Great. And now see, it disappeared because it's white, but we'll make that legible by adding a background to our navbar. And we can call this navbar wrapper. I'll just call it navbar main. And let's give it a background color of like a dark brown. And then this is going to want to have a flex. This is going to be a flex container. And we'll say justify content left. But, you can put this wherever you want it to go. And, you know, I'm going to give this margin 0 just to sort of reset things. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, we probably aren't seeing that yet. I need to bring this class over and in and through right there. To navbar main and import styles from navbar.module.css. There we go. So that's that. There's our home, there's our about, there's our orders. Oh, you know, one more thing we can add very typically is to say .navbar item hover. And we'll say color, let's make that be like a different color. Maybe we'll go a little lighter. Yeah. So now when we hover, we can see that. And we can make our page a little bit bigger just to make it nicer. And we'll just say like 90 VH. Oops, I need to say heights. All right, so now, there we go. So now, you know, it just looks like there's a page there. But what goes on that page is, of course, up to you. That is not the subject of this video. I mostly just wanted to make a quick and dirty example of a navbar for you in your portfolio projects. So I hope that was less than 10 minutes. I'm not sure. It was close anyway. And happy coding out there.